Welcome back, folks, to my WrestleRant video series where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, I'll be talking about all the Insurrextion pay-per-views on the WWE Network exclusive to the UK. So 2000, 01, 02, and 03, all exclusive to the United Kingdom. So that made the atmosphere really, really enjoyable. And, biasly speaking, and, biased here, just being biased. Always enjoy the England crowd, and this was really no exception. All the crowds on all of these shows were all great, so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But definitely enhanced the shows as a whole, so let's get right into it with the 2000 installment. Kicking off the show is Too Cool versus Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko, who were part of the Radicals at the time. Pretty good matchup for what it was to kick off the show. I think the Radicals were kind of breaking up this point because Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn kind of teased some tension towards the end, and after the match ended and after they lost. They kind of picked on one another a little bit, so that was kind of the final the final straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, between the Radicals, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko. So Too Cool going over here, good match, really nothing out of the ordinary, fine match to kick off the show, but nothing too hot, I guess I should say. Up next, we had Kane versus Road Dogg. Not Kane versus Road Dogg, that's the next match. Kane versus Bull Buchanan. Again, decent match, a little worse than the previous match, only clocked in about 3.5 minutes. It was fine for what it was, but Bull was nothing really to behold in the ring. Kane wasn't really anything too great either, but complete squash for the most part. Easy win for Kane, but pretty much a throwaway matchup. Up next, we had Road Dogg versus Bradshaw. So they had a bit of a story going into the show, and I was really confused because Bradshaw was on his own. But not for maybe all three of these shows, or all four of them technically, because there's four of them, 2000, 01, 02, and 03. But I think for the first three or whatever else, he was by himself. He was still doing the APA stuff, but he had the music and whatever, he had the APA look. But Ron Simmons was nowhere to be seen, so I haven't really done my research on that. Poor journalist on my part. But still, that he was by himself, so that kind of struck me as a little bit odd. So it was a fun match for what it was. I mean, again, they didn't really have much of a story. They might have, but for the most part, they didn't really touch upon it. Road Dogg came out victorious, and that was that. So we had an arm wrestling match up next, and this one was interesting. Between the Cat and Terry Runnels, Fabulous Moolah in Runnels' corner, and then we had Mae Young in the Cat's corner. So it was, like the Attitude Era, this is the peak of the Attitude Era in 2000, when it was all about the sex drive and everything else with the women. It was really not about the wrestling at all, and this is a prime example about that. An arm wrestling contest, you don't get any worse than that in pro wrestling. I can't remember the last arm wrestling match that we had in WWE that was decent, to be quite honest with you, but this was more of the same. I'm not going to complain because they were wearing skimpy clothing and whatever else. That's always entertaining to the male viewers. I've talked about this before in my Great American Bash reviews and stuff like that. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but it just feels like a waste of time. It lasts like all of 30 seconds. They were really delaying it a lot with, not the Cat, I don't know, I think it was Terry Runnels. Terry was like, oh, I'm not ready yet, and they had to check her out, and one of them lost their top, and Jerry Lawler going crazy in the ring. He had to moderate the entire thing. It was funny at times. Like, I chuckled a few of the times that Jerry Lawler was going crazy over the women like he always did, but it was fucking high-pitched voice and whatever else. But at the end of the day, it was just kind of like a waste of time. Like, why am I watching this? And if I grew up in that era, maybe I would have loved the hell out of it. But looking back on it, compared to what we have today, it's ridiculous. It was all about the sex drive and everything else, the sexual innuendo. And that was pretty much the premise of that segment. So up next, we had Big Show and Rikishi versus the Dudley Boys. Big Show dressing up and doing all these impersonations, I think. And I think that was around this time. I can't remember. I watched this about 2 weeks ago, I think it was. A fine matchup, only went about 7 minutes long. It was good for what it was. The Dudley Boys are always entertaining. Big Show and Rikishi came out victorious, surprisingly enough. But, it was really nothing too crazy. We got a lot better of a tag team match actually later on in the show, and I'll get to that in a minute. But, decent for what it was, pretty much following the pattern of just fine matches. So we got our first pretty good to great matchup of the evening in the form of Kurt Angle and Benoit. And these two would actually meet on the next year's installment as well. And I'll get to that when I review that show. But this match only went 6 minutes. I know Angle had just debuted in the WWE a short time before this. He was not like a seasoned vet or anything like that. And he'd already had some success in WWE. But I was kind of disappointed this match was as short as it was. I was really hoping for a much longer match from these two. And they would get that on the next year's installment. But still, though, I was hoping for like an all-out wrestling classic. We didn't really get that, but for the 6 minutes they had, they made the most of it. It was a good matchup. Kurt Angle came out victorious with with dirty tactics or whatever else. So he came out with a win, kind of pushing his momentum as as the recently debuted superstar and pushing his way towards the top. So a good, if not underwhelming, slightly underwhelming match that they could have given more time to be more memorable. Maybe cut out the fucking arm wrestling bullshit or one of the other meaningless tag team matches to give this match more time. My opinion, anyway. So up next, we had the British Bulldog versus Crash Holly for the Hardcore Championship. British Bulldog, obviously, a crowd favorite here in England. And I always love the Hardcore Championship and everything they did with it. I really enjoyed it, like the 24/7 rule. Maybe I would have gotten sick of it after a while if I grew up during that time period. But I mean, looking back on it, I thought it was really fun. Like they did the playscape stuff, and when people were sleeping, like the Gerald Briscoe shit, like when he pinned someone backstage and they were being real quiet about it. Like I thought that was hilarious. And I mean, this was more of a matchup. I mean, it was more of a matchup than it was an angle, like we got the next year. But I enjoyed it. I mean, British Bulldog taking the title in his home country, so to speak. So I didn't really have much of a problem with it. So up next, we have the Hardy Boys versus Edge and Christian for the WWF Tag Team titles. And Edge and Christian were the champions going into this matchup. They would lose via disqualification. So even though the Hardys won, they would not win the titles. That said, though, they got a hell of a lot of time. The most amount of time. I mean, Eddie, and I'm looking at the wiki page right now. Eddie and Jericho got like 3 seconds more time. But all the main event matches got a lot of time. And I was glad, too, because this was in the midst of their big, long-running feud over the tag team titles, their series of matches with the Dudley Boys and everything else from WrestleMania 2000 going to WrestleMania 17 and all the other matches they had in between. And this was one of them. I thought the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian had always worked well together. This was no exception. Great matchup from these two, and the non-finish wasn't too surprising, and I was fine with it. I wasn't too pissed, but a really good matchup for what it was, so that kind of made up for it. So up next, we had Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Jericho for the European Championship. And this was around the time that Eddie Guerrero had China in his corner, and he was really, really funny. Eddie Guerrero was so golden. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. He's a fucking legend, obviously. But as a heel, when he was doing the stuff with China, I thought it was hysterical, the pre-match promo that he cut on Jericho. I thought was really, really funny. Jerry Lawler kind of making some... the way that he would get giddy over like some of the heels, I thought was really hysterical. I mean, it's pretty much almost unbearable to listen to him on commentary nowadays, but back then I thought he was really entertaining, and this was one of those times. But yeah, the pre-match promo was good. The match itself was really, really good. Eddie and Jericho have always worked well together. They've always had a great series of matches, and this was another one of those matches in those series. But yeah, Eddie Guerrero came out victorious still with the European Championship in tow. This would not be the last that we would see from Eddie and Jericho. Still, though, really, really good matchup from Eddie and Jericho for the time they were allotted, getting one of the lengthiest matches on the show. So I was pretty happy about that. So I'm really entertaining stuff. Eddie as a heel, I thought was money, and this was definitely a prime example of that. So we get to the main event: The Rock and Triple H and Shane. I think it was a triple threat match, a three-way match for the WWE Championship. The Rock was the champion going in after beating Triple H for the belt at Backlash, I think it was. And Mr. McMahon actually came out for a promo earlier on in the evening saying that McMahon was going to walk away with the WWE title, not The Rock. So they teased some tension between Triple H and Shane throughout the matchup. And I mean, Shane wasn't too much of a threat, but it's surprising because the guy wasn't really a wrestler per se. He was an amazing athlete, obviously, but he wasn't like, on the same level of a Rock or Triple H. But somehow during the course of this matchup, they made fans believe that there was a chance that he could come out victorious with the gold in his grasp. I mean, this was around the time the title was changing hands like almost every week anyway, so it wouldn't have been out of the question if Shane McMahon won here, and he was almost considered a top-tier talent in the form of winning this world championship. But yeah, I thought that this was a really, really good match. A lot of entertaining spots, Rock and Triple H, especially when they were in the ring. A lot of awesome chemistry between those two, and Shane McMahon would get in his spots as well. Stephanie McMahon would interfere at different points. So, yeah, I thought this was a great triple threat match and a lot of entertaining spots. In the end, The Rock would come out victorious, still your WWF champion. So, a pretty great way to go off the show with the crowd being sent home happy. So, yeah, there was really nothing notable about the show for the most part. I enjoyed the other installments more. I kind of enjoyed the installments as they progressed. Like, in terms of I enjoyed the 01 edition more than 2000, the 02 before, more than 01. And you'd think it'd be, like, ass backwards because you would think, the Attitude Era blows everything out of the water. Not necessarily the case. I mean, the crowd was great, obviously. All the England crowds, whatever time period it is, whether it be 2000 or 2014, England's always an awesome wrestling crowd. That goes without saying, and this was no exception. They were awesome on the show. But the show on the whole, though, was nothing too notable. And I mean, it is worth noting that most of these, I think all of these Insurrextion shows, last about 2.5 hours on the WWE Network, or I think they clock in about 2 hours and 20 minutes. So they're not too long of a shows if you want to check them out. I would pass on this one. The other Insurrextion shows I thought were a little bit better. This one just kind of felt like, oh, we're having a show in England. Let's just throw these matches together at the last minute. Kind of what it felt like, but if there's any one match from the show that you should go out of your way to see, by far it should be the main event, the three-way for the Undisputed or just the WWE Championship. But if anything, go back and watch the final hour of this show. Because the Eddie and Jericho, the tag team title match, and the main event as well, I thought were all great. But on the whole, though, you should not go back and watch the show. Not too great of a show as compared to the other ones. So that being said, folks, in my next video, I'll be covering the 2001 installment of Insurrextion. So in the meantime and in between time, you can find me on Facebook at Graham G. Matthews, on Twitter at WrestleRant. All support is greatly appreciated. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.